This is Mission Control Houston. Good morning. You are looking at a tally-ho from one of the cameras outside of the International Space Station looking down at the SpaceX Dragon on the CRS-25 mission, carrying cargo up to the 7-member crew that is on their extended stay on the orbiting complex. Thanks for joining us for this morning's coverage. This comes a couple of days after launching from the Kennedy Space Center out in Florida. SpaceX CRS-25 Dragon has been making slow and incremental steps to get closer to the International Space Station. Now we're seeing it from one of the external cameras as the station and the Dragon cargo craft orbit over the Earth, right now in an orbital daytime, hugging the east coast of Africa right now. The Dragon CRS-25 cargo craft just successfully performed its approach initiation burn. Right now we are in joint operations with the teams here in Mission Control Houston, as well as the teams over, the SpaceX teams over in Hawthorne, California. In Hawthorne, they're controlling the Dragon spacecraft, of course, in joint operations with the teams here in Mission Control Houston, looking after the orbiting complex, the International Space Station. Teams here are led by Flight Director Allison Bollinger, that you see in sort of the center of your screen. She's leading the teams through the rendezvous operations of CRS-25 with the orbiting complex. You'll be hearing the Capcom Michael Ellsworth talking with the crew aboard the International Space Station. We have a couple of NASA astronauts standing by, ready for the monitoring operations that will be overseeing Dragon's approach and eventual docking to the International Space Station later this morning. From the back end of the room, you can see CRS-25s take center stage in the middle of the room with that tally-ho that we have from one of our external cameras, downlinking high-definition views here to Mission Control Houston. With a successful approach initiation burn, the Dragon spacecraft is now in a coast phase, heading to one of several waypoints, sort of incremental stopping points that will guide the cargo craft gently in towards the docking of the forward port, to the forward port of the International Space Station. You can see that approach initiation burn taking place about 2.5 kilometers below, though if you take a direct path to the International Space Station, the Dragon spacecraft is approximately 4.5, a little bit less at this point, 4.5 kilometers away from the station. You can see two spheres that circle the outline that you see, the silhouette of the International Space Station in this graphic. That first one is the approach ellipsoid. That one's at about a 1,000-kilometer marker, and we're about 20 or so minutes away from crossing that marker. Then you see those waypoints where we hug that second circle, that's the keep out sphere. We need permission and a go from the teams, both here in Houston as well as in SpaceX, to proceed inside that keep out sphere towards the first holding point that you see up there, waypoint 2, that's at 20 meters. The 400-meter point and 20-meter point, as long as everything looks good, we'll just zoom right past those. There's no need to necessarily stop at those waypoints, really just markers to execute the series of burns to make those very precise maneuvers and line us up right on the docking axis in front of the International Space Station. Waypoint 2 will be a holding point, and another go, no-go will be assessed to make sure that everything continues to look good at that 20-meter holding point before pressing in for contact. Seven crew members are currently aboard the International Space Station, making up the complement of Expedition 67. From left to right, we have NASA astronaut Bob Hines. Hines will be taking the prime role of the monitoring operations of CRS-25 today. We have flight engineer Samantha Cristoforetti coming from the European Space Agency of Roscosmos. We have the series of cosmonauts that you see there in the center. Jessica Watkins will be taking the backup role of monitoring the CRS-25 cargo vehicle, also from NASA, and then Kjell Lindgren, who commanded the Crew 4 astronauts that you see flanking the cosmonauts there in the center, rounding out the Expedition 67 crew. So again, taking the prime role of monitoring the rendezvous of CRS-25, Jessica Watkins and Bob Hines. They're at a system called the RPOP, Rendezvous Proximity Operations Panel. It's a software that they'll use to monitor Dragon's approach. They'll be able to see telemetry of the Dragon's approach. You can see sort of a preview of that telemetry here. Right now, they're away from the monitoring tool. They did spend some time earlier this morning getting the tool set up, but really they're not required for another 20-25 minutes until they need to officially begin their duties. The Expedition 67 crew, since it is a Saturday, spent most of the morning cleaning up the space station, part of their Saturday morning cleanup duties. Watkins and Hines didn't get away from that, even though they do have the very important role of monitoring CRS-25's approach to the International Space Station. They didn't necessarily get a break from needing to participate in cleaning the inside of the space station this morning. But with that done, a lot of the crew is currently in an exercise period, though they will hold once they get into docking operations, just to minimize the vibrations of the International Space Station. So there is a chance for crew to continue exercising for the next 30 minutes, 45 minutes, maybe a little bit more. And of course, everything is looking good. Right now, we're tracking an on-time docking, approximately 11:20 a.m. Eastern Time, 10:20 a.m. Central Time. And that will bring a lot of the cargo that's inside the CRS-25 Dragon to dock to the forward port. And allow access to the many pounds, several tons you can see of cargo that is inside. Lots of science investigations on this mission. You can see making up almost 2,500 pounds of science investigations. There's some spacewalking equipment, computer resources. There's also some unpressurized payloads that we'll preview a little bit later in our coverage, including a science experiment. There's also some maintenance hardware for there's a battery charge and discharge unit in the trunk there. But overall, we're looking at about 5,800 pounds of cargo. You're seeing some of the features of the SpaceX Dragon come a little bit clearer into view as it gets closer to the International Space Station. Since we last reported its distance of about 4,500 meters, or 4.5 kilometers away, we're now closing in on 3 kilometers. From here, you can see the blinking cargo docking light at the forward end of the Dragon. The view you're seeing now is the view that we'll have during its approach. That's sort of the top of the cone from the graphic we just saw previously. And you can see the nose cone is deployed. Towards the top of this view, you can see that that nose cone is open, exposing the docking ring and the soft capture mechanism that'll be used to make contact with the International Space Station, and will eventually make that tight seal and a hard dock with the orbiting complex. In the background, you can see clouds over the Arabian Sea. It's about to, the cargo Dragon and the International Space Station are about to cross over the southern border of Pakistan and head into an orbital nighttime. So you will see the views get a little bit darker. We may be able to see some of the navigation lights illuminate the cargo Dragon as we continue to get pretty great visuals, some high-definition views using the external cameras aboard the International Space Station, but those views will start to get a little bit darker. So again, 2,500 pounds of cargo, 2,500 pounds of specifically science aboard the International Space Station, and there is a lot of unique experiments coming up to the orbiting complex. This one, called Dynamos, is going to explore some of the complex communities of microorganisms that carry out key functions in soil. They have these key functions, including cycling of carbon and other nutrients that support plant growth. So these soil samples will be coming up to start investigating some of that. In the trunk of the Dragon, you can see a pretty great view from inside the Dragon. That much larger artifact that you see over to the left is an experiment called Earth Surface Mineral Dust Source Investigation, or EMIT. This experiment will be using imaging spectroscopy technology to measure the mineral composition of dust on Earth arid regions. So this experiment will be pointing towards the Earth, and you can see an example of some of the dust there from an image captured from space looking down at the planet. Another experiment is called immunosenescence. Aging is associated with changes in the immune response, known as immunosenescence. Microgravity causes changes in human immune cells that resemble this condition, but can happen faster than the actual process of aging on Earth. So this investigation, immunosenescence, sponsored by the International Space Station National Laboratory, will use tissue chips, these small chips that you see demonstrated here in some of the images. They'll be using these tissue chips to study how microgravity affects immune function during flight and whether immune cells recover post-flight. Now, these are just a few of the examples of the 2,500 pounds of cargo that's on board the CRS-25 today. And again, we're on track for that to arrive to the orbiting complex in just a little bit more than an hour. We're still targeting about 10:20 a.m. Central Time, 11:20 a.m. Eastern to make contact with the International Space Station. Dragon is not the only vehicle to be visiting the orbiting complex. Of course, with 7 crew members aboard comes a series of visiting crew spacecraft as well as cargo spacecraft. The cargo Dragon that you see here against the clouds of actually Pakistan at this point will be making contact and docking with the forward end of the International Space Station. Yeah, you can see the Crew 4 Dragon taking the nadir or the zenith or the space-facing side of the U.S. side of the International Space Station, and then you see the Soyuz MS-21 that carried the cosmonaut trio, including Oleg Artemyev, Denis Matveyev, and Sergei Korsakov, and of course the cargo spacecraft on the aft or back portion of the International Space Station is Progress 81, and on the zenith or space-facing side, Progress 80, both that brought cargo and fuel to the International Space Station. You see CRS-25, once docked later this morning, will take the forward end of the International Space Station. It's scheduled to stay for about a month. And Cargo Dragon, of course, has the ability to return to Earth, equipped with a heat shield to splash down off the coast of Florida, be recovered, and take valuable science back to some of the researchers on Earth. CRS-25 crossing the terminator line, so again you'll start seeing the illumination of the spacecraft and the Earth behind it start to get a little dimmer as we pass over the western region of China, and we'll be heading on a northeastern track to cross into Mongolia pretty shortly. By the time we get to Mongolia, expect to have fairly dark views of the spacecraft. But with those darker views come the illumination of some of the navigation lights on board the spacecraft. You can see the docking light blinking at the center of the spacecraft, but you can see the navigation light, the port red light, coming up a little bit more clearly. There's going to be a green light on the starboard side that will start to be shown a little bit more clearly once we have a orbital sunset. You can see the sun still illuminating the starboard side of the spacecraft. Back with you with live views of the inside of the International Space Station control room. Again, these teams led by Flight Director Allison Bollinger. On the phone there in the background is Michael Ellsworth. He'll be that'll be his voice that you hear from here in Mission Control Houston up to the crew. It'll be Bob Hines and Jessica Watkins that you'll be hearing respond from the International Space Station as they take the prime duties of monitoring Dragon's approach to the International Space Station. The teams here, this room being operated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to oversee the orbiting complex as it orbits 16 times a day. The teams here overseeing the rendezvous operations of CRS-25. Again, we're in joint operations right now, so the teams here working with the same flight rules with the Dragon flight controllers over in Hawthorne, California. Bollinger now polling the teams here in Mission Control Houston for the next burn. Approach 0. So this is a burn that's executed once we reach that waypoint. The waypoint 0 is directly below what's called the R bar. when looking at the International Space Station, it's a line that goes pretty much straight through it, straight down to the Earth. So once we reach that point directly underneath that approach zero burn, we'll execute the maneuver to effectively swing the spacecraft out in front of the International Space Station to line up with the docking axis. Now regaining some views from the International Space Station. Again, you see those views starting to get a little bit darker, that Terminator line coming in a lot clearer, with the spacecraft only 1,300 meters, that's a little over a kilometer away from the International Space Station at this time. You can see it's still pretty high up, so it's still catching some of that illumination from the sun, which is actively setting as we cross into an orbital nighttime. We also did get confirmation that the Dragon spacecraft itself did successfully execute an approach mid-course maneuver. This is sort of a correction burn to once the approach initiation burn is executed to get us to that waypoint 0. The approach mid-course just helps us along the way, making sure that we rendezvous with that point as expected. With a good burn, we're expecting to hit that waypoint in about 18 minutes.
Station Houston on 2 for docking status.
On 2.
3 statuses for you. The first is Dragon range is approximately 1,000 meters, so begin monitoring long-range approach for steps 1 to 4 in 1.102 Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Steps 1 through 4 in 1.102.
Good copy. Second item is we keep sharpening those pencils, and we now have a docking time estimate of 15:13.
Okay, copy, 15:13.
And the last item for either you or Farmer is we've been poking around on SSC-8 a little bit, and we show now that RPOP is working if you want to confirm.
Okay, that's in work, thanks.
And with that, you hear the Capcom Michael Ellsworth reporting to the crew. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. Now looking to aim for a docking at approximately 10:13 a.m. Central Time. That's 11:13 a.m. Eastern. So making great progress as we continue to analyze the trajectory of Dragon. You see that bright white dot a little bit overexposed with the camera that we have on the outside of the International Space Station pointing towards it, which is why it's taking on that illumination. The RPOP that was referenced is the Rendezvous Proximity Operations Panel. Again, Bob Hines and Jessica Watkins are taking on that prime role of monitoring the spacecraft. You can see a preview of that screen that they will be looking at. They did set it up earlier today, and they had a chance to walk away from it until their official duties for monitoring the spacecraft's approach and docking begins, which is coming up. So they're going to go ahead and check on that software, make sure everything is good, and officially begin their duties. In the meantime, the Dragon spacecraft is inside the approach ellipsoid.
Station on 2, Dragon is in sight.
We copy Dragon tally-ho.
All right, and at 9:29 a.m. Central Time, we got confirmation from Jessica Watkins on board the International Space Station. The crew has a tally-ho of the SpaceX cargo Dragon. They visually see it. In the meantime, the International Space Station flight control teams did pull, or were pulled by Flight Director Alison Bollinger, and gave a go for approach 0. So this is the burn that will be executed once the spacecraft reaches waypoint 0, which is 400 meters directly below the International Space Station. So they're on track to execute that maneuver in just a little over 8 minutes. In the meantime, we're getting steady views from the International Space Station. The view you see here, overexposing the Dragon. So that's that bright light that you see off to the right side. With that overexposure, you can see some of the plumes from the Draco thrusters that are helping to maneuver the spacecraft to rendezvous with the waypoint 0. The flight controllers are tracking some of those white flecks that you see passing into view. They're, as of now, they are of no concern, though they are looking into investigating what that is. The red flecks that you see are radiation damage of the camera itself, radiation destroying some of the pixels of the camera itself. Flight controllers continuing to track the Dragon's approach to the International Space Station, reporting everything looks good. The systems on board, the Dragon looks healthy, and the trajectory is looking nominal. We're a little less than 3.5 minutes from executing that approach zero burn, where we'll be directly underneath the International Space Station, and you can tell that we're closing in on that. The range rate is getting much slower, so the Dragon's approach is slowing down. We're at about 0.2 meters per second at this time, and the range is 416 meters from the International Space Station. It's about the 400 meter mark is really what we're heading towards. That will be waypoint 0 when it is directly beneath. And depending on the camera exposure that we see from this view, you may start seeing the Draco thruster plumes start firing as that approach 0 burn is initiated. It's a relatively quick burn because really it's just a maneuver burn just to swing us out in front of the International Space Station, but that's coming up here in about 2.5 minutes. Everything continues to look good. CRS-25 continuing its approach to the International Space Station. We're about 30 seconds from the initiation of that approach 0 burn to swing us from underneath the space station to right out in front. Approach 0 underway. You can see those thruster firings on the left side of the spacecraft from this view. It's actually the nadir, or the lower part of the spacecraft in its docking orientation. If you're looking at it from the perspective of the nose cone, which is towards the top. Flight controllers taking a look at that approach 0 burn. Things looking good so far. In the meantime, the International Space Station solar arrays have been configured for the upcoming docking. Again, we're looking to arrive a little earlier than we were anticipating. We were targeting 10:20 a.m. Central. Now the new target is 10:13 a.m. Central.
Houston Station on 2 for Block Bravo.
Houston's listening. Go ahead.
We see us transition to step 2 and 1.102. We see the vehicle mode as transition to docking access and range 340.
We concur. See you in step 2.
As expected, that was the voice of Jessica Watkins on board the International Space Station. She's taking a role in watching the Dragon's approach and making sure everything looks good, reporting the telemetry and the vehicle's state and status from her perspective and her tool called the Rendezvous Proximity Operations Panel, or RPOP. She's taking on the backup role, so it'll be her voice that you hear more so from the International Space Station, talking with the flight control teams here in Mission Control Houston. Michael Ellsworth is the Capcom, the voice here in the room, at the controls and taking the prime role of monitoring the Dragon's approach from aboard the International Space Station, that prime role of the monitoring, and if necessary can execute the abort should anything look off nominal. From his perspective is NASA astronaut Bob Hines. But as you reported from Jessica Watkins, the vehicle is performing as expected. Things are looking very good for Dragon's approach, passing that waypoint 0 and that approach 0 milestone, and heading to waypoint 1. The difference in the waypoint is waypoint 0 is directly below, and waypoint 1 is directly in front. Once it passes waypoint 1, it'll start making its approach to go inside the keep-out sphere. The teams here in Mission Control Houston will poll ahead of time to make sure the vehicle is in a good configuration and good status before giving that go to enter that keep-out sphere. There's no pausing. That's planned at the 220-meter mark. They could pause if they wanted to, but the nominal rendezvous trajectory and plan has us pass that waypoint 1, executing a waypoint 1 or approach 1 burn to push in right along the docking axis, really straight in towards the docking. Now we're starting to see those views from the International Space Station, those high-definition views looking down at the Dragon spacecraft, which is currently 330 meters, hugging that the outside of that keep-out sphere, making its approach from below the International Space Station to right above. We're about to cross into an orbital daytime. So you'll start seeing the views of the Dragon spacecraft itself, as well as the views behind it, start getting a little bit brighter. Right now the space station is right over the center of the Pacific Ocean. It's about 260 statute miles. It's hugging the Terminator line, which right now is really cutting right down the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So we'll start seeing some views of the Pacific Ocean, perhaps some cloud coverage here very shortly. So you can see the camera start to really change as we get more illumination on the spacecraft itself. The cameras themselves are controlled from a console here in Mission Control Houston. That position is called Cronus. They have full autonomy over the control of the cameras on the outside of the International Space Station, able to adjust the zoom, the focus, the exposure. So they're working right now to do exactly what you're seeing here, to zoom in, focus focus on the spacecraft a little bit more, and change the exposure so we can see the spacecraft and those plumes coming from the Draco's thrusters a little bit clearer. The Dragon cargo craft, about 312 meters from the International Space Station. It really doesn't change in distance as it makes this maneuver from below the International Space Station to right in front. It really hugs the outside of what's called the keep-out sphere, which is roughly 180 to 200 meters away from the International Space Station. So it maintains that distance as it goes in front. But as it makes this maneuver, the timing here could not be more perfect. We're about a little more than halfway from below the space stations to right in front. So if you were looking at a clock, we'd be somewhere around 7 or 8 o'clock. And we're getting, that just happens to line up perfectly with an orbital sunrise over the southern Pacific Ocean. Everything looking good. The teams now are on a go-no-go poll for proceeding past waypoint 1 and executing the approach 1 burn. So this means when it's right in front of the International Space Station, really right along the docking axis, if we get that go, they'll go ahead and proceed with initiating those thrusters. There's no need to pause at that waypoint. The waypoint is roughly 220 meters directly in front of the International Space Station. That go is really also a go to proceed past waypoint 1 and cross into the keep-out sphere. Again, that poll is underway. Dragon's approach continues to look good. We're a little over 300 meters from the International Space Station, just taking in some fantastic high-definition views as it makes its way to waypoint 1. Regaining those views, we'll be handing over for some of the satellites throughout today's coverage. Those tracking and data relay satellites that are in geosynchronous orbit, a little more than 23,000 miles away from Earth. But we're getting those views now and enjoying them as we cross the terminator line into an orbital sunrise over the southern Pacific Ocean. We did get confirmation from Allison Bollinger, the flight director here in Mission Control Houston. Mission Control Houston is go to proceed past waypoint 1, which means once we rendezvous with waypoint 1 here in approximately 9 minutes, we'll go ahead and execute the approach 1 burn and push in from about approximately the 220 meter mark straight in into the keep-out sphere towards waypoint 2. Waypoint 2 is a holding point about 20 meters away, so that'll be the first and likely only hold until we get the go to proceed in towards a contact and capture on the forward end of the International Space Station. We are making some great progress, so we're still targeting 10:13 a.m. Central Time to make contact.
For Block Bravo, range is 299. Vehicle is approaching the corridor. Orientation is as expected.
Houston copies, concurs with all.
That was the voice of Jessica Watkins from on board the International Space Station. Again, she's working with Bob Hines, the two of them monitoring Dragon's approach, reporting great trajectory for the Dragon spacecraft. It is well on its way towards what's called the approach corridor. It's a cone-shaped range, really, that's in front of the International Space Station, and it sets the stage for Dragon making its approach. It's still on its way to waypoint 1. We got about 7.5 minutes until it makes it to there. We'll execute that approach 1 burn to push slowly in. The range rate is very slow at this point. You can see it's making very methodical approach to that point. We're at about 0.09 meters per second, but everything is looking good. So again, Dragon continuing its approach. You can see some of the plumes from the Draco thrusters as it makes its way towards waypoint 1. We're about a minute away from waypoint 1. Now, based on the latest calculations of the trajectory, we are going relatively slow, so we have a new time that we're aiming for docking. That's 10:18 a.m. Central Time. "30 seconds to waypoint 1. What you're seeing is approach 1 burn underway.
Station Houston on 2 for rendezvous status.
With you on 2.
Dragon is transmitting docking camera video, so please confirm video and data are updating in the Dragon docking monitor. And if you bring that up on SSC 17, we can follow along on the ground as well.
Copy and work on SSC 17.
Copy, Waddy, and while you're working on that, just want to let you know that Houston and station are go for Dragon to approach to 20 meters.
Copy, go to 20 meters.
And Waddy, we like that video.
And Houston Station has good DDM video.
Houston copies and concurs.
And with that, you heard Jessica Watkins reporting they've got good video. This is what she's looking at. This is her screen, her and Bob Hines, NASA astronauts, taking the monitoring role, watching CRS-25 push in for docking after successfully executing the approach 1 burn, confirming from here in Mission Control Houston that burn looked good, so we're pushing in and we're proceeding into the keep out sphere towards waypoint 2, the 20-meter hold. Getting great video from the Dragon through that common communications for visiting vehicle, or C2V2, a connection between the Dragon vehicle and the International Space Station that's providing that linked video directly from Dragon to the International Space Station. So we're pushing in. We're a little under 180 meters at this point. Inside the keep out sphere, making a slow and methodical approach to the waypoint 2 holding point, about 0.3 meters per second. We're anticipating waypoint 2 arrival in a little less than 8.5 minutes. And again, the new estimate for a contact time where CRS-25 will make physical contact with the forward end of the International Space Station. The new target that we have is 10:18 a.m. Central Time. Now only 140 meters from the International Space Station. Zooming in from the external cameras provides fantastic high-definition views. We'll be seeing illuminated views of the Dragon spacecraft from here on out until we make physical contact with the International Space Station. We'll be in orbital daytime until that docking time. Everything's again looking good for that approach right now. Flight Director Allison Bollinger going around the room here in Mission Control Houston, getting a poll from each of the flight control positions to ensure that we are go to proceed past the waypoint 2 holding point. Again, we'll make an assessment once we get to waypoint 2, but there's a chance we may push right after holding at waypoint 2. We may push very shortly afterwards towards a docking to meet that anticipated 10:18 contact time. But again, Flight Director Bollinger going around the room now to get a sense.
For Block Bravo, range is 123. The vehicle is in the corridor. Orientation is as expected. Vehicle mode is approach to align point.
We concur, so we see that takes you to step 3.
And again, NASA astronaut Jessica Watkins reporting the status of the CRS-25's approach at predetermined markers throughout the approach sequence. Again, everything continues to look good. We're pressing in towards waypoint 2, 20 meters away. Right now we're sitting at about 110 meters. We did receive confirmation here at Mission Control Houston ahead of the waypoint 2 arrival. The Dragon spacecraft itself is configured for docking, still maintaining great connection and great views from the Dragon spacecraft itself, looking at the International Space Station. When we cycle through those views, you can see the Crew 4 vehicle docked to the Zenith port, or the space-facing port. You see there'll be 2 Dragons docked to the International Space Station for about a month.
Houston Station on 2. We have reviewed steps 5 and 6, and we are ready for docking.
Houston copies that you are ready for docking. We'll let you know when we are there as well.
And it's seeming like we're not going to be holding at waypoint 2 for long. We did receive confirmation from Jessica Watkins, the crew on board the International Space Station. That's Bob Hines and Jessica Watkins. You can actually see the outline of the cupola from this Dragon view. If you look off to the right, where the Japanese module is, the gem, right underneath it, you can see the windows, the 7-bay window of the cupola poking out there, so you know that Jessica Watkins and Bob Hines have visual contact right now with the CRS-25 vehicle that's 66 meters away. So there go, and we did receive confirmation from the mission director out in Hawthorne, California, that the teams there at SpaceX are also go. Again, Allison Bollinger here in Mission Control Houston, polling her team to make sure that the Mission Control team here in Houston is go. That poll being conducted ahead of the waypoint 2 arrival, which is expected 2 minutes from now. As long as everything looks good, we won't be holding at waypoint 2 for long, and we'll press in for docking. With that, we got confirmation from Allison Bollinger. Houston flight is go for docking. So we'll hold at the waypoint 2 once we get confirmation of a good hold. Don't expect to be holding there for very long before we push in for docking. That waypoint 2 arrival is expected in about 15 seconds. We're sitting at about 23 meters. Again, that hold is at 20, and we're slowing down our range rate to about 0.15 meters per second and going down.
Station Houston on 2, the Dragon hold we performed at waypoint 2 was very brief, so Dragon is now resuming approach and go for docking. You can go ahead and monitor per steps 5 and 6 in 1.102, Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Copy, go for docking after a short hold, and we'll go on steps 5 and 6.
Good copy.
And as anticipated, the hold at the 20-meter waypoint 2 point was very brief. The Dragon CRS-25 vehicle pressing in for docking.
Approach to docking port. Prior range is decreasing. And range is 14 meters.
Houston copies, concurs. Good report.
Good report from the crew. That approach from the waypoint 2 holding point is looking good. We're pressing in towards a contact and capture. Now we are temporarily losing that video from the International Space Station. We should regain it shortly, but we do still have good data flowing in from the Dragon vehicle. We're about 10 meters away. You're getting a live view of the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Flight Director Allison Bollinger leading the teams here, monitoring Dragon's approach. Jessica Watkins and Bob Hines aboard the International Space Station also monitoring, and then of course working hand in hand with the SpaceX Flight Control team out in Hawthorne, California. 9 meters in closing.
Houston on 2, primary range is decreasing, range is 5 meters. Vehicle is centered, largest excursion observed is 1 degree.
Houston copies, good report.
All right, 4 meters in closing. Everything continues to look good. Now, we don't have views from the International Space Station, but with the data that we're receiving and the reports from the crew, we are proceeding towards a contact here shortly. 3 meters in closing.
Stop.
Copy, chop.
Crew hands off point.
One meter.
1 meter in closing. And we're getting views right at the last second.
Dragon contact and soft capture complete.
10:21 a.m.
Soft capture complete.
10:21 a.m. Central Time, 11:21 a.m. Eastern, 267 statute miles. Audible laughter from here in Mission Control as we do lose views right after a confirmed capture. We did get those views, though, to see it actually go in, which was fantastic. But we did have a confirmed soft capture at 10:21 a.m. Central Time. The International Space Station and Dragon spacecraft were over the South Atlantic Ocean, 267 statute miles.
Station Houston, ring retraction in progress.
Station copies.
So that soft capture ring, again, we have a confirmed soft capture. That ring is retracting. It's pulling the Dragon in closer to the International Docking Adapter. That white structure you see, that's at the very tip of the International Space Station. That black structure being the pressurized mating adapter. We're looking at the very forward end of the International Space Station from one of the cameras that are off on the Japanese exposed facility. We did have that soft capture at 10:21 a.m. Central Time. We're pulling in using that soft capture ring. We'll continue to provide coverage until we get past a hard mate with the International Space Station. After that soft capture ring is fully retracted, pulling that Dragon in for a nice tight seal, there's 12 hooks that will actually hard mate and hard dock the vehicle to the International Space Station. They are latched in gangs of 2 gangs of 6, so 6 at a time, and then we'll have a hard dock with the International Space Station. But we did have that soft capture 10:21 pulling in with the soft capture ring, and we're standing by for a good soft capture ring retraction and a good hard dock. We'll continue to provide coverage until then.
On 2, we see undocking complete, sensors 1 and 2 off OFF and have started the stopwatch.
We concur, and our status is that ring retraction is now complete, so docking sequence is holding for MCS reconfiguration. We're working that from the ground.
Copies all.
You heard that soft capture ring has fully retracted, meaning the soft capture ring did its job of pulling the spacecraft in for a nice seal with the international docking adapter on the forward end of the International Space Station. There is very fine-tuned, very calculated attitude control maneuvers that the attitude control officer. Yeah, there we go. The International Space Station attitude control has to be configured prior to those hooks driving to be on control moment gyros only. The ADCO officer that you see at the bottom of your screen has just confirmed that the space station itself is using gyros only to hold the attitude in place, meaning we're in a good configuration from a space station side to proceed with driving those hooks for a hard mate. And Flight Director Allison Bollinger just gave that go to the mission director.
Station Houston, MCS is configured. We're proceeding with hook driving.
Copies. We see CMG only.
Capcom Michael Ellsworth.
Your stopwatch is no longer required.
Copy all.
Capcom Michael Ellsworth reporting to the crew that sequence is underway. Jessica Watkins confirming from the International Space Station. Again, she's working with Bob Hines, but both of them monitoring Dragon's approach and watching the sequence unfold. We are proceeding towards driving those hooks. And we got confirmation. Again, there's 12 hooks that create a hard mate between the Dragon spacecraft and the International Space Station. 6 of them have driven and have closed. We have a good latch on those first 6. The other 6 are driving. And we got confirmation the last 6 hooks have driven and are closed. The soft capture ring is stowing, and we're waiting for confirmation of a successful hard mate to the International Space Station.
Station Houston on 2, hard capture complete.
Station copies, hard capture complete. Congratulations to the SpaceX and NASA team on a successful rendezvous and docking of SpaceX CRS-25. When faced with unforeseen challenges, this team remained vigilant and focused, ensuring today's delivery of groundbreaking science and crucial supplies to the International Space Station. We look forward to executing the remainder of the mission with you all. Welcome aboard.
Station Houston, we appreciate those words. Get some cheers around here as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for all the hard work.
And some words from NASA astronaut Jessica Watkins on board the International Space Station. She was next to NASA astronaut Bob Hines, watching Dragon's approach and monitoring, making sure that the 5,800 pounds of precious cargo inside that spacecraft made its way successfully to the International Space Station, and it did. We had a soft capture confirmed at 10:21 a.m. Central Time this morning. And we did get past a good hard mate with the International Space Station. With that, with an on-time docking to the International Space Station, the crew's day is not quite done. With successful approach monitoring and a successful hard capture, teams will work together to open up the hatches, making their way until eventually the Dragon hatch is opened, and they have access to the precious cargo inside the Dragon spacecraft. That hatch open is expected to occur in approximately an hour and a half, shortly after noon Central Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. The crew will have access to the cargo inside, and they're scheduled to, later this afternoon, begin transfer operations, taking some of the critical cargo from inside the pressurized part of the Dragon spacecraft and bring it inside the International Space Station. Their space station flight controllers switching attitude control back to normal with a successful hard mate. And they'll proceed for the rest of the day getting some of that cargo from inside the International Space Station. It's been quite a journey after launching 8:44 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:44 p.m. Central on July 14th, making a journey over a little more than a day and a half to rendezvous and make contact with the International Space Station at 10:21 a.m. Central Time this morning, July 16th. That time was 10:21 at the time. The space station and the Dragon spacecraft are 267 statute miles over the southern Atlantic Ocean. We heard congratulatory words from NASA astronauts Jessica Watkins and from the teams in Mission Control Houston. With that, that'll wrap up our coverage of today's rendezvous and docking operation. CRS-25 officially attached to the International Space Station and will be for the next month. With that, this is Mission Control Houston.